Hey everyone, welcome to Sidetrack Adventures. This is Steve. Currently we're in San Diego, and today we're going to be exploring a place that is filled with forgotten history. From Native American villages, to farms, to oil wells that had no oil, and maybe even a ghost or two. Today we're going to be exploring Tecolote Canyon. Right now we are in the heart of San Diego, not too far from Mission Bay. We're starting out at the Tecolote Nature Center, which opened in 1994. And despite having visited this canyon hundreds of times in my life, which I'll explain in just a bit, this is the first time I've ever been to this nature center. This thing's pretty well done, especially for a local park. There's lots of information on native plants and animals here. They even have a rattlesnake in here. This will probably be the only one of these we see today. But I'm ready to head out and hit the trail, which probably won't look exactly like this. Since I'm filming this in January, it's unlikely we'll see any rattlesnakes, but you never know. Tecolote Canyon is a rare place in the middle of the city of San Diego where you could somewhat get away from civilization for a few minutes. Though, you really aren't far from it. But that's been the case for centuries, long before the city or town of San Diego ever existed. When the Spanish first arrived to the area in the 1500s, the entrance to the canyon was the site of a Kumeyaay village, and had been for generations. The village was here until the late 1700s, when the Spanish mission period began, and the Kumeyaay were made to live closer to the mission. And here's an example of a Kumeyaay structure, or ewa. 400 years ago, the mouth of this canyon would have been filled with these. There's also a native plant garden here. Along this fence, they have paintings of some of the different insects that can be found in the canyon. Tecolote means owl in Spanish, but there's a story that the canyon was named for vines that grew here that the Aztecs called tecolil. That seems kind of suspect to me, as owls are found in this canyon, and why an Aztec word would be used for anything here is beyond me. Whatever the true origin of the name, it was listed as Tecolote Valley on the first survey of the Pueblo of San Diego in 1845, so the name at least dates back that far. Above us on top of the canyon is the University of San Diego. That university is actually built into the canyon, as we'll see. I can only imagine how many people have rested under this tree over the decades. This was the perfect spot for a Kumeyaay village, as it was near the ocean, but the canyon walls helped protect it from the elements. After the natives were forced out in the late 1700s, the canyon didn't stay empty for too long. Right now they're working on the sewer system down here, and all of this construction doesn't exactly make for the most scenic of hikes, but hopefully we'll get past the construction area pretty quickly. In 1872, Judge George Hyde built a ranch in the canyon, and farming and ranching would be a part of this canyon for the next 90 years, into the 1960s. Because this whole section of canyon was farmland at one point, they're still working on restoring native plants. Looks like we finally made it past the restoration areas. So for this video, I'm going to do things a little bit differently. Normally before we go out to a place, I'll do a lot of research on it. But for this video, most of the research was done by my dad. As a kid, my dad lived above this canyon, and throughout his childhood, he would come down here and explore and play, and he's written pretty extensively on it. And as a matter of fact, as a kid, because my grandparents lived right above it, I would also come down here and explore. And this is the first place that I ever got poison oak. So maybe not the best experience, but still, this canyon has a lot of memories for me as well, though I haven't been here in quite some time. Well, as I'm filming this, about 2 weeks ago, my dad lost his battle with cancer. And while he was in the hospital the day before he passed, I was talking with him about Tecolote Canyon. And so I felt that this would be a fitting tribute to him to come down here and explore Tecolote Canyon again and use his research to talk about its history. While ranching began here in 1872, over the years additional farms would open up, and as houses were built above the canyon, people would often find goats and cows wandering into their backyards. I was recently looking at a historic map of San Diego, and this area was just represented by a bunch of cows. When ranching started here, people must have thought this canyon was pretty nice, because in 1873, the city of San Diego had their 4th of July picnic here. The University of San Diego's baseball stadium is actually built into the side of the canyon, and you can see the lights and the foul pole right in front of us. I thought we made it past the construction, but I guess not. I know this isn't exactly a place that, if you're visiting San Diego on vacation, that you're dying to see, but I'm always fascinated by that hidden in plain sight history. So many people travel through this canyon every day. There are major roads that go through it, and here's the University of San Diego right here. But very few people know anything of its history. And in the grand scheme of things, some of that history isn't that long ago. There are probably people still living above the canyon today that remember when the canyon was filled with cows grazing. The canyon is completely surrounded by housing now, but that isn't anything new. A man named William Fish built the first house in Tecolote Canyon in 1882, and his daughter would end up living there until her death in 1954. In the early 1960s, there had been plans to build housing in the canyon itself. Those plans were defeated, but they did build a golf course, which we're coming up to now. You kind of have to watch out in this area because there are a lot of bad golfers. And speak of the devil, here's a golf ball right here. So a lot of golf balls come flying out of the golf course. There is a creek in the canyon. If it hasn't rained in a while, most of the water in it will be runoff from the golf course. But as a kid, we'd find frogs and crawdads living in it. And of course, we'd also get into poison oak down here. My grandfather used to come down here, collect as many golf balls as he could, take them back home, clean them up, and then bring them back down and resell them to the golfers. There is no shortage of bad golfers, so he had an endless supply of golf balls to sell. And here's Tecolote Creek. To kind of emphasize how this has always been a prime location for people to live, in 1889, a story appeared in the San Diego Sun newspaper that seems pretty unbelievable and should probably be taken with a grain of salt, or more likely a whole spoonful of salt. But the story goes that a stagecoach was heading from the gold fields to Tijuana when a strange figure yelled out, "Halt!" One of the passengers cried out to plead, "Take our gold, but spare our lives." And the figure, who was a woman, replied, "I don't want your gold. I am the Cirus of Tecolote, and I've come to advise you to invest your nuggets into marina lots at only $15 as quickly as possible if you want great wealth and the most delightful home." And then she left. Marina is the area right at the mouth of Tecolote Canyon. I guess that strange woman stopping the stagecoach to offer real estate advice worked, because the story goes on to say they all turned around and bought lots at Marina. I'm going to head up to the top of the canyon to get a view from above, and also to talk about a ghost. If you just stick to the main trail through the bottom of the canyon, I don't think it gets that steep, but some of the trails to the top are pretty steep. In the 1920s and into the 1930s, there was a motorcycle event in the canyon to see who could make it the farthest up the sides, with motorcycle companies like Harley Davidson and Indian taking part. The winner of the 1925 competition made it 260 feet and 11 inches before wiping out. He was riding an Indian. As you can see, we're up above the golf course now. The trail has narrowed a bit as we head up, though I'm not sure we're out of the range of bad golfers yet. The golf course is also the site of one of the stranger chapters in the canyon's history. In 1917, Lewis Wilde was elected mayor of San Diego. During his tenure as mayor, he came up with a scheme to sell subscriptions in an oil drilling venture in the city. Investors would be given a share of the profits once oil was found. San Diego isn't exactly known for its oil reserves, and of course, no oil was ever found. Furthermore, the mayor was using his own land for drilling sites and profiting off the venture. After that, he wasn't very popular, to say the least. He didn't run for re-election in 1921 and passed away in 1924. The fifth and last of the mayor's 5 oil wells was here in Tecolote Canyon, approximately where the pro shop for the golf course is now. That well was drilled to a depth of 1,274 feet. Okay, we've made it to the top, and here is a view from above. It kind of takes you away from the nature, but they've covered a few of these trails in concrete up here to protect them from erosion and so that maintenance workers could still access them. Across the canyon here is the Wheatstone Mobile Home Community. Military housing was built there during World War II, and after the war, the houses were abandoned and eventually dismantled. That left the streets and sidewalks, but no buildings. Apparently, on one Halloween night in the early 1960s, a group of teenage trick-or-treaters decided to cut across the now vacant Wheatstone Street to add to their sacks of candy. As they neared the halfway mark, a large white apparition suddenly appeared near a tree, floating a few feet off the ground. To say they were scared would be an understatement. As the ghost-like figure drifted towards them, one of the older boys, who was dressed as a carpenter, threw a claw hammer at the mass, and they all ran for their lives. The police were called and the area was thoroughly searched, but nothing turned up. The story did make the local newspaper the next day, along with interviews from the still shaken witnesses. My dad told me that for years after that night, many a young man proved his manhood, some because of a dare, others for pride, by walking the deserted Wheatstone Street alone at night. Let's head back down into the canyon and we'll see if we can find a different way back and do a little bit more exploring. Some of the side trails in the canyon are far more scenic than the main trail. This is the Battle Trail, which is named for Eloise Battle, who is one of the people who helped save the park. In 1957, the San Diego City Council planned to use Tecolote Canyon as a landfill, but due to protests by area residents, those plans were canceled. In the early 1970s, it was decided to make this a park, and it was adopted by a unanimous vote of the City Council in 1974. The park was officially dedicated on April 1st, 1978. This isn't really a sign you want to see when you're out on a hike, but I'm going to go ahead and chance it. I don't see anything yet. Normally you can hear the nest before you even get close to it. I don't hear anything. My guess is that it was probably in this tree, but it's already been removed. Yeah, I don't see anything. Something's out here. I don't know if the mic just picked that up, but there's something in the bushes over here. If I had to guess, it might be a coyote, but I don't see anything yet. Whatever it was in the bushes, I never got a glimpse of it. Like I said, probably a coyote, maybe a large rabbit. We really haven't seen any wildlife down here at all today. And according to this sign, we've already passed the wasp's nest. Most traces of the canyon's ranching and farming history have been removed, but you can still find a piece here and there. Tecolote Canyon may not be the most historic or exciting place to visit, but I'm glad that in a major city like San Diego, places like this still exist. So that's our look at San Diego's Tecolote Canyon. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and we'll see you next week. I love you, Dad.